The Raiders' offensive line was just awful last week. They gave up consistent pressure all over the line and didn't create any holes in the run game. The Broncos' defensive line has improved drastically against the run compared to last year. However, I'm not going to let one bad game let down seasons worth of production compared to just 3 games. I'm hesitant, but I'm giving the Raiders the edge. The line is elite and must prove it once again. As for the running backs, Marshawn Lynch and the rest of the running back group did not look good last week. There were no holes, and as powerful as Lynch is, he can't overpower everyone on his own. For the Broncos, they have the best player on defense. Von Miller is an absolute game wrecker on defense. Him alone puts the linebacker group over the Raider running backs. Now, on to wide receivers versus cornerbacks. The Raiders have one of the best starting duos in the NFL. However, they were shut down last week and got smacked around. Crabtree is having a solid start outside of last game, but Amari Cooper has not looked good. He has way too many drops. It won't get much better against the Broncos. They had the no-fly zone with 3 of the top-rated corners in the NFL. Aqib Talib, Bradley Roby, and Chris Harris Jr. are elite corners and have a major edge against the Raiders. And now we're on to the Raiders tight ends versus Broncos safeties. Both of these groups are relatively new. Justin Simmons and Darian Studer are untested, but the Broncos had enough faith in them to let go of Pro Bowler TJ Ward, and it looks like a good decision so far. The Raiders have a mismatch in Jared Cook, and he has also played well so far. It's early, but I'm giving the edge to the Raiders. The Broncos have a slight problem with tight ends, and Cook has looked good in the game so far. Derek Carr looked completely lost last game against the Redskins. The Broncos let Wade Phillips go surprisingly and replaced him with Joe Woods. The defense looks like it hasn't lost a step. However, Woods is just too new, and Derek Carr has proven he can play. In terms of scheme and deciphering a defense, Carr is one of the best. I'm giving Carr the edge, but the Raiders' offense as a whole is behind the Broncos. Now, let's switch gears to the Broncos' offense versus Raiders' defense. We start in the trenches again. The Broncos have completely rebuilt their offensive line, and looks like the investment has worked. I'm not saying the line is great, but it's certainly adequate. The Raiders' defensive line has played surprisingly well so far, especially against the run. The game changer, of course, is Khalil Mack. He destroyed game plans and single-handedly puts the Raiders line ahead. Now, we have the running backs versus linebackers. Truthfully, neither group is very exciting. The Raiders have done surprisingly well stopping the run, but struggle with running backs out of the backfield. The Broncos have CJ Anderson. Anderson was off to a very hot start, but was slowed down last week. I'm giving the edge to the running backs this time. Anderson is a very solid player, and we still don't know enough about the Raiders linebackers. As for the Raiders cornerbacks versus Broncos wide receivers, the Broncos receivers win this one hands down. Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas form one of the best wide receiver tandems in the NFL. They have produced year after year for over 1,000 yards no matter who is the quarterback. Trevor Siemian trusts his receivers and just throws it up when he's in trouble. They come down with the ball often. The Raiders cornerbacks have not looked good so far. Smith has been a disaster, and David Amerson is struggling. First-round pick Garyon Conley is holding his own, but the Broncos win this one easy. The Raiders safeties need to play with discipline. They've been pretty up and down so far in the season. Carl Joseph slipped a bit after 2 excellent weeks, and Reggie Nelson seems like a step behind. The Broncos, on the other hand, do not have much at the tight end position. Virgil Green is a fine player, but could have a big game since the Raiders always struggle with tight ends. Still, the Raiders have more talent and have played slightly better, so I'm giving them the edge. Now for coordinator versus quarterback. Ken Norton Jr. just doesn't seem to put his team in the best position to win. The defense has talent, but always seems to perform worse than expected. Trevor Siemian, on the other hand, is a steady player. He's beaten out the first-round pick again and just continues to prove he deserves to be the starter. Siemian has the edge here with his consistent and steady play. In conclusion, the defenses have the advantage here for both sides. The Broncos have better wide receivers, but the Raiders have the better lines. Khalil Mack and Von Miller are 2 of the best defensive players and will have a major say in the outcome. In the end, the Broncos have the edge in this one. The defense will continue to play at an elite level, and the offense is just slightly ahead of the Raiders' defense.